Hi, everybody. Welcome to another session of Right to the Top. I'm Adam. In today's video, what I want to talk to you about are essential grammar items. More specifically, we're looking at the sentence components. So, essential sentence components. Now, previously, I had made the first part of this little series, and I spoke about the clause. What is a clause? Subject, verb, and you can see the link up at the top here if you want to watch this video. Today, we're going to look at the other type, another major component of the sentence, which is the phrase. And today I'm going to look at the different phrase types that you need to recognize and understand and be able to use. Now, again, why do you need to know clauses? Why do you need to know phrase types? Because these are what you're going to use to construct your sentences. This is also what you're going to use to achieve sentence variety. And again, I made a video about that. You can watch it. There's a link up top here. So let's get right into it. We're going to look at, first of all, what is a phrase, and then look at a few of the different main types you need. So a phrase, how do you recognize a phrase? Well, first of all, you're going to see a whole bunch of words without a subject and a verb. As soon as you see a whole bunch of words together and there's no subject and there's no verb, but they're working together, you have a phrase. Now, it's very important to remember that a phrase has a function. It could be a noun, but with many words, many modifiers, etc. It could be an adjective. It could be an adverb. It could be an introductory phrase, means it leads into the sentence. Or it could be a part outside of the main clause that tells you something about the entire clause. So phrases mostly are used as part of the clause predicate, means they're inside the clause. But you can also have phrases outside the clause working on the entire clause. Those are the absolute phrases. A phrase, obviously, because there's no subject and verb, it cannot be a sentence. A sentence must have an independent clause. A sentence can have many phrases, and each one with its own different function. And phrases can include other phrases. So you can have phrases inside of phrases, and you can also have dependent clauses, mostly adjective clauses, inside of phrases. And we're going to see some examples of these. So let's start with the noun phrase. The noun phrase is essentially a noun. It might have many words, but the whole phrase together works as a noun, okay? The most important thing to remember is that you have your head noun. That's what you have to recognize within the noun phrase. The head noun is the main noun, and whatever verb that is going to be attached to this phrase is going to agree with that head noun, okay? And then whatever modifiers you want to add, adjectives, adverbs, if you want to add clauses, adjective clause, etc. Now, the thing about a phrase, because it's working like a noun, it can take the place of a noun. It could be a subject of a clause. It could be an object or a complement making up the predicate, or it could work in another capacity. So here are a few examples. The head of the research department decided. So what you have here, the entire phrase is the head of the research department. So you have head, you have research, you have department. You have a bunch of nouns. You need to recognize that the head is the head noun, okay? And the verb is going to agree with it. Here I have a noun, head, plus a prepositional phrase, of the research department, working to identify head of what, right? The specific head. Then the next one, the car that I bought last week, or the car I bought last week, and then you go on, is red or whatever. Here I have a noun plus an adjective clause. Now remember that because the car, and I have the car and I have the article the, which means we're talking about a specific definite car. So I need to identify it. So the adjective clause is part of this noun phrase. The whole thing together is the subject of the sentence, is the noun working as the subject. The reason I put that in brackets is just to make sure you understand. I can take the word that out. The car I bought last week. The car I bought last week is still an adjective clause. You must recognize that it's identifying the car and working together to make the noun clause. And then I have the high school girls basketball coach was fired. I have high school girls basketball coach. The whole thing, again, is your noun phrase. The word coach is the head noun. So the head noun can come anywhere in the sentence. You need to recognize a complete noun phrase, identify the head noun, make your verb agree. So look at this one. The high school girls basketball coach's decision to implement strict new rules on hair length. A lot of words here, a lot of nouns, lots of adjectives, lots of other pieces to it. There's only one head noun. This whole thing is a noun phrase working as a subject of the verb, and you need to identify that the main noun, the head noun, is the noun decision. This one, decision, okay? And the decision was met, so not were. The decision was met with protest, etc. Again, the reason I'm showing you this is because you're going to see a lot of sentences, especially in your readings, in your academic readings, that the head noun and the main verb are far apart. You need to recognize what is happening. You need to recognize the phrase, identify the head noun, make your verb agree. Now, let's go on to a prepositional. So just like it's called, a prepositional phrase begins with a preposition. In, on, at, of, by, with, among, between, all kinds of different prepositions. Make sure you study prepositions because from my experience, people have a lot of trouble, a lot of difficulty with prepositions. Those of you who are learning English, so study them. Remember also that prepositions have functions. They show direction, they show time, they show all kinds of different things, location, material, etc. So in a prepositional phrase, they're doing the exact same thing, except you have more words. Now, remember also that prepositions also take objects in many cases. Let's look at examples. On the first day of the year. So here I'm telling you when, and this is also an introductory phrase because it's beginning the sentence and setting it up. On the first day of the year, the villagers traditionally walk down to the river for whatever they do, okay? When, which, so we're looking at time. Which day or when. Jill bought the dress at the shop on Rodeo Drive. So Jill bought the dress where? At the shop. Which shop? On Rodeo Drive. I can have more than one. Each one has its own specific function. Make sure you recognize that. Kyle usually doesn't like sweaters. This is a complete sentence, but I want to give you a little bit more information to specify the type of sweaters that he doesn't like. I don't want to say he doesn't like all sweaters. He doesn't like sweaters of unrefined wool. He likes sweaters made of cotton. He likes sweaters made of a different type of wool. This specific type he doesn't like. So I'm giving you the specific type with a prepositional phrase. Okay, and these are very, very commonly used. Reading, writing, you need to use them as well. Appositives. These also give people a lot of hard time. Now, what is an appositive phrase? An appositive can be a one-word phrase or a whole noun phrase, but it's always going to have a noun. A one word, it's not really a phrase because it's one word, it's a noun, but it's being used like a phrase, okay? What it does is it renames the word that came before it, or the idea that came before it. So it just puts the same thing that was mentioned before, comma, and then puts it in a different expression or a different way of saying it, so it might be a bit easier to understand or to identify. So we usually use it for clarification or emphasis. Okay, so we're going to look at the example. My boss's daughter, Linda, was just hired to lead the project. So my boss's daughter, comma, Linda. Okay, I'm telling you, boss's daughter equals Linda in this case. All I'm doing is letting you know where it is, who it is. What's the boss's daughter? Was just hired to lead the project. I can do it like this. My boss's daughter, Linda, was just hired to lead the project. If you're identifying the daughter, then there's no commas. So think of appositives like adjective clauses, okay? Except that they're reduced. There's no conjunction, there's no subject, there's no verb. There's just a noun or the noun phrase. Now, if the boss has more than one daughter, and I need to tell you which daughter it is, I take the commas out and I identify her as Linda, okay? The Smiths' newly built house, a modern 4-story design on Main Street. So house equals modern 4-story. I just telling you something else about the house. Here I'm clarifying, other times I want to emphasize, etc., was broken into. Now, keep in mind that in a positive can also be used as an introductory phrase. I can put it at the beginning of the sentence. A modern 4-story design on Main Street, the Smiths' newly built house was broken into. Again, the modern 4-story design still means the Smiths' new house. House, 4-story design, okay? So these are our positives. Let's look at the next one. Okay, so now we're going to look at the infinitive phrase. And the infinitive phrase, again, just like it sounds, begins with an infinitive verb, to verb. It doesn't take any tense, it's infinitive, but we're using the verb to introduce an idea, an action, okay? And this can be the subject of the sentence, it could be the object, it could be a complement, okay? It's still a phrase, and the whole phrase has that function, object, complement, or subject of a clause. Don't forget what, you need an object here, to send out that package. So here, I'm using an infinitive phrase, to send out, and don't forget that even though it's a verb and it's being used as a phrase, it still might need an object. So make sure that the infinitive verb is also complete. If it needs an object, if it's a transitive verb, give it an object. If not, not. Or direction, if it's a non-transitive, etc. Some people believe. Some people believe what? So now I need an object to the verb believe. But look, I notice that I'm starting with that. This is a noun clause. So in the noun clause, I have a clause, I can do whatever I want. I need a subject, I need a verb and object, subject and predicate. That to give into one's impulses, subject, is to admit defeat. And this is a subject complement. I'm equating something is something else, right? But again, I'm using 2 infinitive phrases here. And you're gonna read these a lot. What I've noticed, a lot of people don't use these in their writing enough. Make sure you do, okay? Next we have the gerund. The gerund, as you know, is an ing verb used as a noun. So here I have a phrase that begins with a gerund. Now, a lot of people forget that just because you're using this gerund as a noun, don't forget that the gerund is still technically a verb, okay? If it needs an object, give it an object. Make the phrase complete. So I'm going to use it the same. I'm going to use it as a subject, an object, or a complement of a clause. Living paycheck to paycheck makes some people nervous. Living paycheck to paycheck, this is your complete subject. A thing to remember about gerund phrases, they're always singular, okay? You're never going to have a plural gerund phrase subject. Keep that in mind. That's why makes. Notice makes, not make. Now, however, others are quite comfortable not knowing what their future holds. They're comfortable. Okay, that's a complete idea, but you want to give a more complete meaning. So you're going to add a complement, not knowing. So I can use it a positive or negative. Knowing is a transitive verb. It needs an object. What their future holds, I have a noun clause as an object to the gerund knowing. Okay? So I'm using the whole thing. Now I have the gerund and the noun clause. The whole thing is a gerund phrase as a complement to comfortable. Please forgive what? Object. My being late this morning. Possessive gerunds. Very confusing. I'll make a different video about that another time. Okay? Next, participles or participle phrases. These are very confusing. These will also be a separate video. I just want to show you what they are. Basically, these are reduced adjective or adverb clauses. When it's very clear the relationship between the 2 clauses, I can make the dependent clause, the adjective clause or the adverb clause, shorter by removing the conjunction and squeezing the subject and verb together into what is called a participle. An ing participle, active, or an ed or irregular participle, passive. Assured of a place on the team, Jack went out to celebrate with his friends. So Jack, who was assured of a place on the team, so I took the adjective clause, I took out the who, I took out the was, now I have a phrase. Because I have a phrase, I can move it around. I can take it outside the clause, put it at the beginning. Assured of a place on the team, Jack was. The thing to remember, when you have a participle, the implied subject, the subject that got squeezed in with the verb, must still be the same as the subject of the other clause, of the independent clause. Okay? Feeling restless, the old man went out for a walk. Two ways. Because he was feeling restless, the old man went out for a walk. Or the old man who was feeling restless went out for a walk. Either way is okay. While working on his paper. So here, because we're not exactly sure if it's an adjective clause or an adverb clause, leave the adverb conjunction to make it clear. While working, while he was working on his paper. So at the same time, the student. And then you have an adverb clause of time relationship. Okay, absolute. Basically, what this means is you're not using it as a subject, you're not using it as an adverb or an object or a complement. You're just putting it outside the independent clause. And this phrase applies to the entire independent clause, not to any specific part of the clause. Okay? These usually include a noun, a participle, and any modifiers that are necessary. With all the votes nearly counted, the candidate's surprise victory was virtually secured. So the independent clause tells you the candidate was pretty much the winner. And how do we know this? Because with all the votes nearly counted. And there's your participle, by the way. Okay? And we're beginning with a preposition. Absolute clauses can be any of the types there, as long as they can be outside and apply to the entire independent clause. According to recent reports, the stock market is set to plummet in the coming months. So we have an idea about the stock markets. How do we know? Because according to recent reports. So recent reports, or another way I can write this, recent reports have shown that the stock market is about to plunge. Now, here's where it all comes down to. Why is all of this important? Well, sometimes you're going to see sentences like this. This is one sentence. It's very long. It has lots of different parts to it. It has one independent clause and a bunch of phrases and one dependent clause. So if you need to, press pause on your video player, take a little time, and identify the independent clause. What is the message of this sentence? The message of the sentence is in the independent clause, right? So when you're ready, press play, and I'll show you the clause. Many researchers have drawn the conclusion. That is your independent clause. Of course, it's not really enough. You need more information, and that's why you just keep adding phrases everywhere. Notice that I put the brackets around the dependent clause. Why? Because this is absolutely necessary to go with the word, with the object conclusion. Okay, have drawn the conclusion. Which conclusion? There could be many conclusions, and then I need the identifying adjective clause to tell me which conclusion. But that's another thing. Now, the reason I wanted to show you this is because when you practice your writing, and even when you're practicing your reading, I can take this sentence and write it this way. I can put the subject, many researchers, right at the beginning, and I can put different things in different positions. I have a positives, I have everything. I can write it like this, many researchers, and I change the ending. Put the stock market at the end before I had the spiritual pursuits at the end. And I have one more, the erroneous and unsupported conclusion. Here, I'm putting the subject a little bit buried inside the sentence, and I'm putting different things in different positions. Why? Why would I want to put different things in different positions within the sentence? Well, it all depends on a few things. What was the information in the sentence just before this one? What will come in the next sentence? What is this paragraph about? What is this particular section about? It's very important to place your ideas where they will stick in the reader's mind, or where they will have the most impact. If the researchers are not the most important part of the sentence, bury them in the middle. If they are the most important, make them the subject right at the beginning of the sentence. If you want to remember them as you go forward, put them more towards the end of the sentence. So information placement within a sentence is very important, and phrases are your best tool to manipulate that sort of positioning within a sentence, okay? And that's what you need to know phrases for. You also need to know clauses, different types of clauses. I'll get to these in other videos, etc. There was the original again. And that's basically it for phrases, okay? Now, a lot to take in. I'm going to make individual videos for the harder ones, like the participles, the appositives, etc. But for now, if you have any questions, please ask me in the YouTube comment section, and I'll get to you as soon as I can. If you like the video, give me a like, and please subscribe to my channel. And come back soon for more videos on grammar, vocab, test prep, etc. Okay? I'll see you again soon.